essentially, you're asking an incredibly good question, and I would say in one respect it is quite difficult to explain, because I think what's coming to my mind is my vantage point from a synthetic chemist and why I love the science. Students ask me that same thing. They're like, okay, yeah, I'm looking at molecules and atoms, but when you start to go down into that level, and they say, when am I ever going to use this again? I mean, if I'm being in all honest, if you're treating a patient, or if you're filling a cavity, you're really not going to be contemplating, where the atoms are. So I don't know if at that point, because the depth of that question it is really getting pretty deep, and it is kind of hard to get to the heart of that.
Sure.
The way that I just
but what I think you're saying is that organic chemistry is constantly a part of everything.
Yeah.
And that without it, then all of this would all fall apart, and we would be, all basically in traffic ooze. And it would be a very, very different universe.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. I think you said it much better than I did. But exactly, it's kind of the science that shows you how everything is held together. Yeah, that's a very good.
Okay,
I'm going to start using it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, this is very, very, very helpful, right? Because you're taking organic chemistry, out of this sort of two-dimensional flat, there's no reality, just words on paper kind of an expression, and you're giving me something that I can connect with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I now appreciate that, when I cook dinner tonight, there is going to be, a lot of, I'm going to be doing a lot to the atoms and the molecules of the food that I prepare. And by doing, by heating them and cooling them and whatever else, by combining them, I'm getting the result that I'm after. And organic chemistry is sort of the foundation of, all of it.
Yeah, that's a really good way of summing it. It just kind of brought to mind one thing. So a lot of times what I tell students is you can look at the sciences if you want to kind of generalize and say, how did all the sciences come together? Is there different perspectives? So the way that I always say is, let's just take medicine, because that's obviously a lot of the topic is a lot of students go into that, is you look at it, you've got anatomy and physiology, which is the gross forms that we typically see and everybody can relate to. But then if you just change your perspective, we're going to be talking about the same thing here as I go through this, but it's just a different perspective. If we zoom in a bit, then we go into the biochemistry. So these are large molecules. We can't really explain all the details of them, but we can still kind of get a sense, I see a powder here, and okay, maybe that's an enzyme. But then when you go to organic chemistry, you're zooming in even more. So then you've got the point where now you're actually looking at the molecular processes that are actually going on when the atoms come together and they fall apart. And then if you want to go even farther than that, you go into physics, where you're talking about the subatomic particles, and you're talking about the energy behind everything, out of which all of these things even come into existence. But we're talking about the same thing. It's just a matter of, are you zooming in or are you zooming out? So it kind of puts it in perspective in that.
That's much easier. Like, all of existent reality is just like layers upon layers of onion, and the deeper that I zoom, the closer that I get to, whatever it is that you want to call this.
Yes.
Like, sub-quantum, kind of very cool, very popular in the science conversation, where everything gets very, very weird. I love this.
Yes. Yeah.
So compared to that, organic chemistry is pretty easy. Cool. All right, now I got to ask you this last question, because it has always bothered me.
Okay, I hope I can answer it.
What the hell is the difference between organic chemistry and general? Why do they call it different? Organic chemistry versus general chemistry. What's the difference?
The simplest way, if we just break it right down, general chemistry deals with math, and organic chemistry, there is no math. Now, if we go, so that's obviously that's a very, very broad thing. So if we go a little bit deeper, general chemistry deals with the entire periodic table, whereas organic chemistry simply deals with, I think it's probably about, let's say, 10 atoms at most. You go over some others, but essentially it's the amount of the periodic table that you look at is really another easy way of looking at it.
Oh, wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. That is awesome, Jason. That is really awesome. I really appreciate that, because, I feel less disconnected from organic chemistry after having spoken to you.